Hello, and welcome to A Slice of Pie, the semi-weekly Newsish show that we do on this channel. And honestly, I think this time it's going to sound a lot better. You see, we actually made a bunch of upgrades in order to make this actually work in any kind of capacity. You see, I honestly did not like how the stream looked last time. I really am not used to live content. When it comes to pre-recorded content, it's much easier for you to kind of just fix it in post. And that is something that I am pretty guilty of doing a lot. And so the last time we did this show, I thought that the audio wasn't as good as it could be. I thought that the video wasn't as good as it could be. And hopefully, look around and listen with your ears. It should actually be a little bit better. As you can see in frame, we actually have a microphone. I actually bought a mixer, and so there's background music. I can actually quiet that down if it's too distracting for you guys. Honestly, like everything's all set up, and we are good to go. So let's actually start talking about our first topic, which is Intel giving up. So let's get right into it. Let me actually pull up my notes on this one, because this one's a bit interesting. So for those of you who do not know, Intel just released. Wanted to make sure. Just saw like a warning right over here. Okay, cool. Intel just released their 11th gen processors, and they're not great. In fact, actually, normally there are a number of people who kind of come to Intel's defense, like even with 10th gen, even as Ryzen was beating Intel like pretty much IPC to IPC, there were the stark defenders of Intel. This time, there's not nearly as many. Even like, let's go over the big ones. Linus Tech Tips reviewed it quite unfavorably. Gamers Nexus, which tends to lean more center, they reviewed it quite heavily. Jay's 2 Cents reviewed it, and it was, again, not great. Essentially, like, how it broke down was that if you were doing anything above an i5, stick to 10th gen. And that is surprising. It's surprising to see that Intel just stopped. They stopped trying to beat their own processors. They stopped trying to beat AMD, or at least that's what it seems like. Now, I know part of it is because there is a new architectural upgrade or change that was being put in place for Intel's 11th generation. But they also like reused like an older architecture, which made it not as good. And it's weird. It's almost as if they knew that it would sell just based off of the name alone. And that to me is kind of scummy. Like, I know a lot of people were looking forward to PCIe 4.0, particularly people who don't like AMD because they just don't trust that the processors would work properly. There were, like, the big little chips were a thing that I heard a lot of, that people were kind of excited with the idea that there would be a ability to, like, clock it down so it doesn't use as much power, because as weird as it sounds, Intel has become the power-hungry one. And none of that really, like, yes, PCIe 4.0 does exist, but you're better off with Ryzen. Like, hands down in almost every single example, excluding the i7 or the i5. The i7, the i9s are just not worth it in the 11th gen. And that just, it shocks me a little bit. Hopefully, now that we have essentially like new management over there at Intel, they will start to try to compete with Ryzen. And I really do hope they do. Especially because right now AMD processors are at their hardest to get that I've ever seen them. I've been building with AMD since the Athlon days. It's been usually the easier of the two to get a hold of, and now they are not. They are actually worse. So yeah, I kind of like, I want competition so that I can just build my PCs, you know? But that's just one of those interesting things that I found about this whole situation. Also, on the note of XE graphics, Intel did upgrade the XE graphics. Apparently, according to users and benchmarks by professional reviewers, the graphics actually fall flat of what AMD did with their 4000 APUs, which are actually due to be seceded any minute now. So it seems like Intel wasn't able to catch up graphically. They weren't able to beat their own processors performance-wise, and they aren't able to compete price-wise. And it's like, it's weird. It's almost as if they just gave up. And that's why I've titled this video or this stream specifically the way that I did, because yeah, it seems like they gave up. Okay, so I mean, let's try to move away from like the depressing stuff like that and talk about something interesting that I found that I'm actually, it's part of a video that we're working on right now. So I actually unboxed and reviewed sort of the Razer Huntsman V2 analog. And personally, I love this keyboard because I consider it the future of PC gaming. And there's really not been a good case for it yet. As I've been playing games, I've been finding ones that work, ones that don't, and we've been working on a video that's specifically outlining what actually works. The problem is, when it comes down to it, it just doesn't work as well as you would think in as many games as you would think. So unfortunately, like, I'm in a situation where I don't necessarily want to recommend it because it's super, super expensive, and there aren't really that many options for gaming on it yet. But I did finally find a game that actually does a really good job of selling this keyboard. And it is, of all things, Kingdom Hearts. Now I know it seems a little weird that Kingdom Hearts only just recently came out on the PC, but it is an instant recommendation for me for this keyboard. And that it's a little weird. You see, I actually went to use my controller to play it because I actually downloaded it yesterday, and I was like, yeah, I want to play some Kingdom Hearts. So I got my controller plugged in and it wasn't working at all. Like, it just was not working. So I was like, okay, I'm guessing it's picking up the Razer Huntsman V2 analog. Some games have done that in our testing. So I was preparing to disable it, and I decided, you know what, let me try key shift mode, which is sort of like a pre-packaged mode that turns your W, A, S, and D keys into like an analog stick. And so I did that, and I was shocked to find that Kingdom Hearts actually accepted mouse and keyboard inputs while using that mode, which I did not expect at all. So while I was using that, I found that it made the game better. And I know that seems weird. I know it seems super, super weird to think that like it would work that way, but like you have a scroll wheel on your mouse and it allows you to scroll through the menus, and it means that you don't get bogged down. So for those of you who haven't actually played a lot of Kingdom Hearts 1 in particular, the menu was mapped to the directional pads on the controller. And with the Xbox controller, it's not as bad. With the PlayStation controllers, your sticks were up top. And I actually originally played all of that on the PlayStation 2. So your sticks are up top, and you actually have to essentially control the game, like the menus, through these D-pads, which require you to let go of one of the two inputs. With PC and using the Razer Huntsman V2 analog, you actually don't. You can actually play that game without changing your hand position at all with keyboard and mouse, and I actually really am impressed by it so far, to the point that I actually have found like the game that like proves this concept to me. This, and I think it's Devil May Cry, the most recent one, have really good support for the Razer Huntsman V2 analog, and I keep saying the whole name, just the analog keys. It works really well with the analog keys. And I was shocked to find that it worked as well as it did. You essentially lose nothing. And so for me, once this becomes mainstream, once this becomes the norm, this will be the thing that like sells analog keys It's specifically going to be when you can use it flawlessly, and then you have additional features like scroll wheels and stuff like that that control to things that no longer had control like that. Okay. So let's move on to our next topic. We've got, this one's a fun one. Yeston has revealed a new waifu GPU. And I actually like this one. So I actually have visual to go with this one. Let's go. Here we go. So this right here is the Yeston waifu GPU. And I'm going to be honest, I actually really like this one. It's got a nice purple and like white-ish, off-whitish color scheme. I don't really, I haven't bought a Yeston card before, but they are one of the few companies that seem to really want to like do something weird with GPUs, and I dig it. Like, problem is, first off, I'd have to import it from China, I believe. I think they're a Chinese-only company, and just getting a hold of many of these GPUs is just impossible right now. It's still not getting better. So definitely an interesting thing. Personally, I like the fact that Yeston keeps like trying these new things. They actually were shown off by AMD in their roundup of 6700 XTs. And it was, I think, the first time a lot of people outside of the Gamers Nexus audience actually knew about Yeston. So, yeah. Also, to you, person who commented first, I appreciate that. You are the first person. I will give you validation on that one. All right, but so that's the Yeston waifu GPU, and honestly, like, yeah, I kind of wish that every single graphics card maker made their own waifu, because that would be certainly interesting, to say the least. I'm sure it would sell really well. All right, moving on, we have a nice... Let me get the waifu off of the screen. Moving on, we actually do have an interesting rumor. Well, more of a leak. So I did allude to earlier that when talking about Intel just giving up, that we are going to be seeing new AMD APUs. And we are actually really close to seeing them. We actually saw some FCC filings, and it's sort of as leaked out that we are going to be getting them soon. Much like the last generation of APUs, though, these are actually going to be the 5750 and the 5550. So very much in the same naming scheme as the last APUs that we never actually got personally. I do think, though, that having APUs coming into the market is a good thing, because right now, buying graphics cards sucks. And having an APU means you can build a system that has some graphics processing built into it without having to worry too much about putting a GPU in there. And I do personally think that an APU AMD system is currently superior, at least gaming-wise, to an Intel-based system with Xe graphics. And from the testing that I've seen, that is pretty true. So when it comes down to it, having new AMD APUs, specifically Zen 3 with Ryzen 7, 5700G, 8 cores, graphics processing, I believe it's still Vega graphics is what we're looking at. We're looking at a pretty compelling upgrade path for people who don't necessarily want to wait for a GPU and just want to get in there. And from what we've seen, AMD-based APUs have been pretty good at essentially trying to think of the best way to put it. They've been good enough to get rid of a lot of the lower end graphics cards. So things like the I think it's the 1050 competed with the AMD APUs when they first came out. So honestly, I'm looking forward to seeing this. I can't wait to see what we end up actually getting, because if we don't get them this time, I'm just going to get a hold of an AIB or something and just try to buy it off of them. I currently know where to buy the Ryzen Pro series that never came to us. And I've been thinking about doing a build around it just because of how hard it is to get a GPU in this current market. So, yeah. Honestly, I'm excited for it, and I can't wait to see where it goes. Hopefully, we actually get something out of it. Okay. NVIDIA enables resizable bar. This is for every single 3000 series GPU, and it requires a vBIOS update. That being said, first off, 3000 series, hard to get a hold of. And second, I don't know if too many people who know how to flash a vBIOS, but hopefully it looks like, it looks like NVIDIA has provided a tool, much like how AMD did when the 5600 XT came out, and they had alternate vBIOSes to flash. So personally, I like the fact that resizable bar is coming to everything. Now, if you have an AMD 3000 series processor, you can also do it just using a BIOS update. NZXT has finally made an AMD motherboard. This is honestly one of my gripes with the AMD or with the NZXT building system. Their motherboards look so good in their cases. Like, they just look amazing. And at one point, when I was actually building Supernova, I was considering using an H500. Yeah, I think that's the one. I was thinking of actually using that case. And I just couldn't figure out a way to get cam to work with everything else. And it was driving me nuts to the point that I actually decided not to use NZXT's case and fans or anything related to cam so that I didn't have to deal with it. And because of that, I ended up building Supernova with everything but NZXT. And I did build in the NZXT H500 at one point. It was a very basic build. It still didn't use anything that required cam. But now they actually have a couple of motherboards. They got this one in white, which looks pretty nice. And then they also have this one in black. And these are AMD motherboards. They are B550. Lots of I/O on the back. There are ports for using APUs. There's pretty much everything you would want. And the price isn't too bad. I mean, you're looking at it right now. It's pretty competitive for what it actually is. It does look like it would look pretty good in a few different builds. Inside NZXT cases, though, that's where this really will shine, because it has the same design architecture, the same cam connectivity. It's got like a ton of USB 3.0 ports right in the front. And honestly, like, I really like how it looks. I think that if I weren't building the all RGB Razer setup, I would be buying this motherboard for something. And I still might. I am working on a test bed, and the fact that it has HDMI out means that I can use an APU in it, and I'd be able to essentially work around a bad graphics card or really just any real problem. It does have a debug LED. From what I saw, it has an onboard power button, like everything you'd want for a test bed. The only thing is it's B550 instead of X570. And personally, I prefer to do X570 for a test bed because overclocking. You want to test everything. And when it comes to B550, I mean, its overclocking is good, but it's better on X570 usually. But since this is the only board that NZXT is making, it might actually be a good motherboard for overclocking. I really don't know. I haven't tested it, and I haven't seen too many people who have tested it. I've seen, like, I think one other channel, Darwin Does Tech or something. Love the content that this guy makes. His scripts are brilliant, but he really only just kind of scratched the surface when it came to what this motherboard probably can do. And honestly, like, I mean, some of that's the actual, like, type of content that's on YouTube. We do cut out some of the fat in order to make sure that everything works. So honestly, I do think, though, that a B550 NZXT motherboard might be an interesting thing for me to take a look at. But it's currently not in the cards just yet. what in the world is this background music? Dome Sweet Dome. I think I used that for like something specific. Okay. All right. So now let's actually take a look at our next topic. Cooler Master finally launching the Master Frame 700. So for those of you who haven't actually heard of the Master Frame 700, it is what I would want the Thermaltake P3 to be. I said as much when I first heard about it. I had issues with my Thermaltake P3 that were fixable. I tried modding it to like really like fix what I wanted, but I just didn't. I wasn't able to get it where I personally wanted it. And this case, on the other hand, this is where I would have wanted that. So this right here is the Master Frame 700. And this is one of those cases that just, it's interesting because of how functional it really is. So I actually really did want to use my P3 as a test bed. And it kind of works for as a test bed. The feet give it about like an inch off of the table to actually suck in air. And if you're just using air coolers, it's completely fine. Don't get me wrong there. But if you were doing liquid cooling, it just choked off the entire bottom. And it became one of those questions of like, okay, well, is it worth paying for the more expensive one? Because Thermaltake recently released one that actually had a lot of the features that I would have wanted. And personally, I thought about it. Like, I could have bought that one and been happy. But then the Cooler Master came out with this. Now, from this picture, it doesn't look like a test bed at all. In fact, it looks like just another, what is it, the P7? The one that had the trifolds? But, that looks a lot more like a test bed. So, yes, it has multiple configurations, including one that you can put on a wall. And personally, I like this configuration right here because it has up to 3 360 radiators at a time, which is nuts. Like, I personally love the idea of having that much radiator space. And the way that they have it set up actually in this gives me ideas of how I would build with it. I do think that I would use one of those 360 spots for a reservoir, maybe even a flat res to make it like really kind of stand out a little bit. But exactly how they have it in this picture, like, I like that. I really do like how that looks. And it hides less than the P3 ever did. But it does look pretty good. And because it looks pretty good, I personally, I just honestly like think that this is one of the best like sub like 250 wet benches you can buy. And we'll find out. I am going to be buying this one for the channel. There will be a video on this one at some point. But essentially, like, the main thing about it is it holds a lot of hardware. It looks pretty nice. And yeah, from what I can tell, it will honestly be one of those things that is just awesome. Hopefully. I'm hoping that it's awesome. It could suck. It could be just like how I thought about the P3 and then it just like tanks. And then yeah, that would suck if I spend $200 on this and I hate it. Okay. So now we have definitely one of our more interesting topics. NVIDIA is relaunching the 1650 to fight supply problems. This is particularly weird because the 1650 is one of the few that you can still find. Like, if I go to newegg.com, like, let's go right now, and I type in a 1650, I can still find it. That being said, I'm finding it for $453, which is well above its MSRP. This is supposed to be like $100 card, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. 1650 MSRP. Yeah, $160. for the super variant. So not even like the normal variant. It's supposed to be around $150. So $150 MSRP, and they're selling it for like $400. And honestly, like, I don't know, like, if NVIDIA does relaunch it, like, is it going to end up being cheaper, or is it just going to end up sucking the entire time? Because I mean, at this point, they can charge whatever they want, and people will still buy them because it's all that's around. That being said, if they are releasing them as a Founders Edition type card, maybe NVIDIA can dictate the price. I highly doubt it. They haven't been able to really keep a hold of prices this entire time that, that the 30 series has been out. So I highly doubt that the relaunch of the 1650 is going to go well. Unless they just have a lot of that stock or a lot of those GPUs lying around that they can just flood the market with and get the prices back down. I mean, the pricing problem is so intense right now that we actually did a video this week that was trying to buy a 3080 with the cost of an inflated 3080. And as crazy as that video concept sounds, like I in my head, I was like, there's no way that this would work. And when I did it, I found that not only did it work, but it's truly sad. You could actually buy a main gear PC with a Ryzen 9 5950 or 5900. It was either the 5900X or the 5950X. And a 3080 in it for the same cost that the eBay scalpers were paying or charging for a single 3080. And the conclusion of that video was like, hey, if you're going to spend that money, just spend it over here. Just spend it at main gear, because main gear at least will give you a whole PC with it, which comes with RAM, hard drives, coolers. It actually wasn't even like it wasn't their stripped down version. It was like a legit PC. And hilariously, that video got interesting responses from a lot of people, including one person who was like, hey, you should just not buy it. And I'm like, but the point of this wasn't that you should buy this. It was the point of it was that you could buy it if you needed to. But I actually I did find that the video itself was very well received from you guys. I personally like doing it, and I kind of want to do a kind of a follow-up where I build what would be my ideal upgrade for Supernova, and then see if I could get the parts for cheaper than the cost of building the PC itself at this point. Which I'm sure the answer is going to be yes, because a 3080 is in there. Like, I think that main gear PC comes really close to what I would want. I just need hardline tubing, I think, and it would be pretty much the same thing. So kind of a crazy world that we're living in, where GPUs are effectively so overpriced that going to an AIB to get a whole system ends up actually being cheaper than the GPU itself. Yeah, that's just one of those weird things. Personally, I don't know how we got into this situation, but hopefully, we see the end of it at some point. That being said, this isn't actually going to help the GPU market all that much, but it is kind of a fun thing to kind of bring up. I got fun. In the data center, AMD and NVIDIA are the only two options, really. I know Intel's starting to make their way into there, but China is preparing their first GPU for this. It's called Big Island, and yeah, you're probably not going to buy it. It doesn't seem like it's the kind of thing that you would want to try to game on. It looks like it's entirely just compute. It doesn't even really look that impressive for a compute card. But at the same time, I do find it interesting that a Chinese-made GPU is coming into existence that is running on TSMC's 7-nanometer process. The only problem is, as I said, it's entirely data center. and most likely will not be something that you could buy stateside anytime soon. And from what I can tell, AMD's data center, like ProFire cards and NVIDIA's data center cards, are still not in short supply. They're still doing well. So I guess it's just, supply and demand, and data centers don't like to upgrade. If you are running a Ryzen Zen 3 processor, you may want to keep an eye on this one really quickly. Spectre-like attacks for AMD have been discovered. They haven't actually been used at all. Like, nobody has actually been affected by it yet. But AMD did actually put out a warning and steps to disable speculative, what is it? Speculative something. It's got a fancy term. It essentially just means that the processor assumes the next action and takes it before you tell it to, which is how they actually are so fast. In fact, Intel was using this technology so heavily that that's where the original Spectre attacks happened, was right in the same area. So when it comes down to it, AMD, I'm guessing in their search for better and better IPC, thought that they might be able to beat it, and they didn't. And so, yeah, there's technically a vulnerability now for Ryzen 5 series processors. But as they said, there have been no confirmed attacks so far. And for most users, which was the same with Intel too, as much as it was talked up, for most users, it is not likely to be a problem. As it's a very specific targeted style attack, and most of you guys don't have 5000 series processors yet. I mean, I only have the 3000 series. I got like 4 of those, but not a single 5000 series one yet. And it might actually be fine, because technically speaking, by the time you can buy the 5000 series, we're going to be on AM5, and we'll be dealing with the next AMD processors. So yeah. I guess making light about the fact that we can't buy anything. All right, but so essentially AMD is the one who actually brought this up, and hilariously AMD is also the one who is giving us instructions on how to avoid it. So I mean, it's better than Intel, who pretended that it didn't exist. Oh boy, this one's a fun one too. GameStop is now selling graphics cards. So fun fact, GameStop actually used to sell PC components. I actually remember back like a while back, you could get some PC components from GameStop, including capture cards. So I'm actually not all that surprised by this. I know some people were really shocked to find out that GameStop was going to be selling graphics cards again. But honestly, like, hey, and actually, to the person in the comment, yes, you are very much allowed to prefer whoever you want to prefer. Personally, like, I can understand like the argument for Intel processors and the Intel ecosystem. Personally, I have been DIY for a very, very long time. And AMD has been a little bit better in the DIY space since as long as I've been building, which is around 10 years. So it's one of those things where, like, I can understand. Like, Intel has very good stability. And their integrated graphics cards do mean that a lot of them are like super plug and play. But personally, like, if you've been like one of those people who like overclocks or uses heavy XMP or needs heavy workload, like multi-threading workload, AMD has been the way to go. But you are entitled to your opinion, and you are okay to have that. And personally, that's kind of how tech grows, differing opinions equal, different things. Your audio is echoing, probably an OBS setting. Let me see. Does it sound good now? Yeah, let me switch headphones to listen to the one that's on the stream. No, it is definitely still echoing. What the heck? Why is it echoing? There's nothing on OBS that should be doing it. There, that might work. No? Let me see here. That should have worked, I think. It's like a waiting game. There we go. All right. Also, thank you, Andrew, for that comment. And to answer the question of what graphics card do I have, I actually have a 5700 XT still. And that's all under Liquid. And I've overclocked like crazy on that card to the point that I actually got it to like roughly the performance of a it was like right underneath the 3080. It was like around like a 30 or not a 3080, a 2080. So it was like right around like a 2070 Super. Personally, I love that GPU, but it's actually my streaming PC that needs help. I'm running like an R7 it's old, like a 2800 or something like that in there. It is barely keeping up with anything. So yeah. Also, thank you guys for pointing out the mic thing. I think I figured out what was causing issues in the last stream too, and just now. Apparently, I thought that I had just the video running through the camera, and it's running audio for some reason too, which it should not be doing. So I have a setting on here that turns off the audio, so I don't know what's going on. But now I guess is a good time to actually talk about it. So I actually like invested a lot into getting this microphone, which is like I think $100 microphone, and the Go XLR Mini, because I hated how echoey everything was. So next time we'll get it better. GPUs are available at Micro Center, but I have a problem. I actually am located next to no Micro Centers. I actually have to leave the state that I'm in order to get to one. The closest store that sells GPUs to me is actually Best Buy, of all places. And they have been like, I don't know what they're doing, but like no GPUs are hitting their shelves. They're just not putting them out, or they're being all bought out. I do know in my area in particular, I have a scalper problem where we have a lot of scalpers who have been scalping Pokemon cards and also like PlayStations and stuff. They've been like active in the stores. They've been actually going to the stores and like buying them out. And I only know this because I actually like asked a couple of employees about like exactly how they've been doing it. And they essentially like they place online orders for these things using different accounts, and they'll come in, they'll only pick up one, but it's like a group of like 8 or 9 people, and they'll come in, they'll pick up one each, and they'll just completely like buy out like a short supply of something. So the only thing that I've seen in store was the GT 710, which if you guys know about, is one of the worst possible GPUs to try to throw in. You are much better even just using Intel integrated graphics or Vega graphics on a AMD APU. Oh, this is still like making noise. All right, where were we? Oh yeah, we were actually talking about GameStop selling GPUs though. So personally, Yeah, that's what they're doing with the Pokemon cards too. I actually personally know um that they've been doing it. I drove by Target on Friday, I think it was, and there was like a group of people waiting outside the store to camp out to get cards. And I'm like, how dedicated are these people to this? They're like legitimately coming in just to like scout these cards. And personally, I haven't been in the Pokemon collecting since I was a kid, but I'm amazed at like how dedicated some of these people are for this. Fortunately, like that can't be done online, I think. But the GPU issue with like specifically Best Buy is definitely concerning. They just don't seem to hit the shelves at all. So yeah, it sucks a little bit. But fortunately, I do think that with GameStop entering the market a little bit, we might actually see something like the needle being moved a little bit, maybe just a little bit. And the only reason I say that is because although there were like some instances where like 3DSs weren't really available, or essentially like their pre-order system is built well enough, and the fact that it has to be done in store kind of like negates the ability that bots have to really like destroy the system. So the way that I look at it is, if GameStop position themselves as sort of a wedge between how the scalpers are getting cards now, they could probably actually kind of get back a little bit of clout in the eyes of the public. So think about it like this. For a GameStop pre-order, right? You have to go into the store, like plain and simple. You go into the store for a GameStop pre-order. And how many people can actually like suck up a pre-order if they have to go into the store? I know personally, as somebody who has gotten many limited edition things from GameStop, there is enough time between when you get to the store and you get to that pre-order that you can actually like beat other people who are trying to do the same thing. And it's just one of those things where it's like, yes, pre-ordering is bad and pre-ordering games is dumb because there's an infinite supply. Like you can download a game at any time. If you can't buy a game, you can download it. Consoles are a bit different and have been a problem this entire time. And so have graphics cards. So what I'm essentially thinking they could probably do is get a queue system, kind of like how EVGA did it. And because each person has to physically go to the store and actually place their pre-order, there's a lot of options for essentially a normal consumer to actually beat the bots. And personally, I think that is where we will start to see sort of the end of the GPU issues, is like once we can get to the point that bots are no longer a problem and the stores are able to actually provide them. I think Micro Center having them in stock is a pretty good example. You cannot buy Micro Center GPUs on the website. You actually have to go there. And I hate to say it, but like brick and mortar seems to be the way to go. I just wish more places actually sold them. All right. Well, I mean, that's all of the topics I have today. If anybody in the chat has anything else they want to bring on up, for us to talk about a little bit, we can go ahead and do that. But yeah, I mean, this has been interesting. We started with Intel just giving up, and we ended with GameStop selling GPUs. Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, well, I think that's going to end it for us then. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you've been watching us since the beginning, I really do appreciate it. Dude, keep up the live. I honestly like, I'm going to keep working on it. I have some ideas for the next time I do it. I just didn't have time to work them out. I was trying to get it so that I can get the topics in the bottom corner. Oh, what do I think about Intel's GPUs? Okay, well, so honestly, like, we haven't seen anything about them, but I have a sinking suspicion, and it's just a bit of speculation based off of who's working on them, that they're going to be very similar to Vega was back when AMD launched it. So Vega was interesting because it was very, very, very compute heavy, not very power efficient, but as a GPU, the Vega GPUs were really good for like really kind of pushing things a little bit. They also were very well designed to do compute heavy task. And honestly, like, I do think that Intel's GPUs are going to get there. I think that that's where they're going to be, and that's where they're going to try to position themselves as a compute heavy GPU. And the reason that I think that is because when it comes down to it, like, Intel's group that are working on it worked on Vega, and Intel as a company tends to prioritize businesses and business center type development. And if they can say, hey, we've got a GPU that it may not be as good at gaming as NVIDIA or AMD, but you throw a render workload at it and it will crush it. And then you can also game. The marketing for it is just a little bit different and might actually work out. They're going to probably hit the market very sparse. They're going to be very sparse when they hit the market. And the reason for that is they're going to be internal mostly. Maybe TSMC will help a little bit. I keep messing this company's name up. I will never say it right, but they might help a little bit. But like, I do think that Intel's going to try to fab it themselves. They're building a new fab. I think it's going to take 2 years to construct, but once that fab comes out, maybe we'll see the supply actually meet demand. But a third option is a third option. And personally, if there is Intel, NVIDIA, and AMD competing in the same space, we should, cross our fingers, start to see like the market shift a little bit. And honestly, like, that is where I want to see things go. Like, I want to see it so that we can honestly, like, I want to be able to type into Newegg GPU and pick between the best option and not just the one that's there. Like, side rant about this. I personally have stopped trying. And I stopped trying because the Newegg shuffle prices have been so bad that like I was competing effectively to buy a GPU over MSRP. And I'm gonna use this button just because I really want to use it, but it is ridiculous that we are paying for like a 57 or a 6700 XT. We're paying roughly it was like $700. For a 3080, we're paying over $1,000. For a 6800 XT, it was $1,000. For a 6900 XT, $1,000 card, they were charging $1,500 to $2,000. So $1,500 to $2,000. It was like so bad that I personally, I did not want to, picked up I mean, for the 5600 XT, it's inflated, but it's not as bad as it could be. I saw those GPUs around like the 320 mark when it was good. And that was when it was good. So 150 over is much preferable to the $300 to $400 over. And personally, like, I know that like it's gotten so bad that in the video where I tried to buy a 3080 with the cost of a 3080, I actually didn't remember the MSRPs. Like, I actually had to look them up because normally I would have seen them enough times. It would have been something in my head that I just had kind of bouncing around. And instead it wasn't. It was just something that is just bad. Let me see. I think I still have the Google sheet for it. Let me see. Yeah. So the actual price of a 3080 is supposed to be around $699. I have not seen it at that price in months. Like, I have just not seen it at that price. The 6700 XT was going for like $1,000 on eBay. Like, none of these MSRPs make any sense. With honestly, like, I did all of the math. Like, we were looking at things like, I think the highest percentage over was 357% over MSRP. Like, that's just nuts. And I mean, it will get better. I mean, as I said, my main gaming PC, I'm not struggling. Yeah, and the scalper market is crazy. Like, it's weird to think too, because when you think about it, right, they were doing this with shoes and tickets to concerts and stuff for years. Before COVID actually happened, I had actually bought tickets to see, it was Green Day, Fall Out Boy, and Weezer. I bought a card from mining. I actually don't think mining will be banned, but let me finish this thought first. And by the time I bought them, like, I think they were like, the tickets were actually pretty cheap. By the time I bought them, like, and checked out, the follow-up tickets for like seats next to mine, in case I wanted to add somebody, were like 300% higher. And I was like, how in the world did that happen? And it's because of scalping. Like, Ticketmaster apparently allows them to resell their stuff. So on the topic of mining though, mining, I don't think will ever be illegal. But when it comes down to it, I do think that mining itself, will be limited in some way. Like, it's complicated enough that I don't think it's going to ever be able to be something that's fully regulated, but like, power companies might refuse to give the kind of wattage that you would need to run lots and lots of GPU. Will you do me a solid and give a shout out to my friend Trevor Thomas? I guess shout out to Trevor Thomas. Your friend Andrew wanted me to give you a shout out. But going back to the idea of mining, mining uses resources like no tomorrow. When it comes to heavy mining rigs, the amount of power you use is just absolutely insane. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get to a point where, let's say, a power company recognizes that you're using X amount over what you're supposed to be using. They might say, hey, don't do that. We'll surcharge you more. Or worst case scenario, they'll say, hey, you're using so much that we're just not going to service this address anymore. And they can very much limit power. They do it all the time. Internet companies, heck, one of the reasons why this stream keeps like dipping in quality is because ATT is like trying to limit how much is going out of this one little apartment over here. Trust me, I pay for what is effectively the maximum package in this area. and they still like put artificial limits in place because they don't want people running, I guess, effectively what they think is like business internet off of it. But so like these companies can limit it. And even more so, like I think it's Ethereum is changing the way that it calculates, like because it was based off of potential throughput. So like if you had 6 GPUs, it would be based off of what those 6 GPUs could hypothetically make. But now it's based off of actual throughput, which comes from what the server receives from your GPU. So your ISP can also limit you. So do I think that mining will ever be illegal? No. Do I think that it will be limited? Yes. I do think that ISPs and electric companies can effectively limit it as they choose. And when it comes down to it, eventually you'll get to the point where it becomes not worth it, right? Like that's the thing that happened a couple of years ago with mining, is it became not worth it to run them anymore. And while I don't think we're in for an immediate crash, I do see signs that will lead us to a crash rather soon. And yeah, like you've got things like Dogecoin that aren't even based off of mining. But at the same time, like I wouldn't be surprised if I wake up one day and find out that crypto's crashed again. Like it happened. And it happens a lot. I do have a funny story about crypto though. So this is one of those weird things that like I kind of kick myself in the butt a little bit. In high school, Bitcoin was like less than $1 a coin. And I knew about it. I not only knew about Bitcoin, but I had a friend who told me to invest in Bitcoin and get some Bitcoin. If I would have put $1,000 into Bitcoin at that point, I would have had more than 1,000 Bitcoin. And hilariously, I blew him off. I was like, you're insane. There's no way that this is going to be worth anything. And with that, I wouldn't have to work a day job anymore. What actually is a Bitcoin? Well, complicated way to say it. Bitcoin's complicated. Crypto in general is complicated. NFT is another thing that I'm like looking at, like you guys are just coming up with new ways to sell nothing. Yeah. It would have been crazy. But going to like that question, like what even is a Bitcoin? Effectively, the way that it worked was if you had PC resources to spare, you could mine, which is like data crunching, and outsource that data crunching number and then get paid in this virtual currency called a Bitcoin. Bitcoin is limited. The number of Bitcoins that exist are limited. There's a finite number of them, and only so many of them. NFT sounds like a Tamagotchi. Yeah, I actually do agree with that on the NFTs thing. But so essentially, like you would be given this token that was worthless at the time, like actually worthless at the time. And because there were only so many of them, and due to the number of people who had them in the tech industry, they would eventually have value, right? They would have some sort of value to them. Now, what that ended up being was a lot crazier than what it was before. Like, I remember hearing stories of someone who paid like, I think it was like 6,000 Bitcoin for a pizza. That's how valueless it used to be. Now we're hearing Elon Musk go, hey, we'll accept Bitcoin for a Tesla. Which in reality is probably a bad decision, to be completely honest. You could just sell the Bitcoin and probably buy a Tesla. But yeah, So when it comes down to it, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general is weird because technically it has no value. It never had any value, but people have made it have value. So yeah. Yeah, that pizza thing is true. It's insane to think back at that too. Like, I mean, like legitimately, like looking back at that, like back at that point, there were a couple of things that I could have done with my life that would have made it so that I don't ever have to work again. And I screwed up both of them. So back when I was in high school as well, AMD shares were $1 a share. Meaning, like, let's look at it right now. Right now it's $81 a share. Like, I used the $1,000 thing because that's what I could have invested at the time. And that was actually my entire college fund, unfortunately. So like $1,000, 81, that would have been $81,000. So $81,000 to like that would have been great. Look up everything about the GameStop again. Like that was the thing about GameStop though, was unlike GameStop, AMD was a safe bet back then. As weird as it sounds. I actually had done a project in school. In fact, actually, I think somebody else in the comments was on that project with me. And we did a stock project and I picked AMD at like 50 cents a share. And they went up to about like $1.50 in shares. And we ended up being the only other group to make a profit. So essentially, like we would have done this like if I would have done this for real, I could have easily made so much on that. And then the GameStop thing, I do think though, the GameStop thing is crazy though, because that's a short squeeze. And honestly, like I'd be remiss to say that I don't have like a couple of shares sitting, but they're like old shares. I've already lost on those shares. Yeah, the other group did day trading too. That was hilarious. Like the other group that beat us day traded and would have been actually taxed more than us if we actually had like played out the scenario. But yeah, the GameStop thing. Unfortunately, like I've got GameStop stock that are they're like 14 years old. They're like really old stocks that were gifted to me a long time ago. And I've been holding on to them because honestly, like I've been wanting to see what happens with this. But yeah, essentially like when it comes down to it, like there are a couple of moments where I could have done yeah, they would have lost everything in fees. That's another thing about like the stock market too. Like cashing out on the stock market like is hard. I know the short-term fees are not worth it. For the most part, like when it comes down to it, if you don't have like X amount in shares, it becomes an issue. Like I know for a fact, the companies that I have shares in are like companies that I've all worked for. And I just haven't touched them. I have refused to like cash out on them, even though some of them are actually worth a pretty significant amount of money at this point, because I know that if I don't sit on them for, I think it's like 5 or 6 years or something like that, I'm going to pay so much in tax. Yeah, it's like a short-term game tax, is what it's called. Let me see if I can get the exact. Man, making me pull out like civics, man. All right. So so long term, right? If you make like a bunch of money, you actually can pay a 0% rate up to $40,000. Short term is much shorter. So like, or much more aggressive. So like you make up to $9,000, 10%, make up to 40,000, 12%, like up to 85,000, 22%, like up to the highest, which is 37%, which is over 518,000. So unless you're like really, really like cashing out, it becomes difficult to like recommend doing something like that. Because you will just, you'll end up paying more than if you wait like, God, what is it? Let's see. I cannot find the exact time. You have to wait like a specific amount of time, and then that fee goes down to 0. It's like taxes drop. Yeah, exactly. Not to mention they also take out more off of like, it also goes towards your income tax and all that stuff. So there are reasons to just not short sell. Like I know for a fact that God, there's so many like pitfalls in there. Man, this has been interesting. Very interesting this discussion going on. I haven't had to think about any of that stuff for years. I just kind of like put things in an account and just kind of leave it, to be completely honest. And I've been paying attention to the whole GameStop or GameStonks thing. Thank you, Alice, for stopping by. Fun fact, by the way, locationally, all right. And also thank you, Andrew, for stopping by and making this chat as well. So I think at this point, the chat's probably going to die off since the two people who have been talking are leaving. So seriously, guys, thank you so much for watching. After we got rid of the whole echoing issue, I think this went off well. Roaring kitty. Yeah, the cat ears are actually a funny story. It was part of my April Fool's video when I reviewed these headsets, or the Kraken RGBs. But yeah, so at that, I think we've been streaming now for over an hour. So yeah, thank you guys so much. I appreciate every last one of you guys. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one, and hopefully, you know, cross my fingers, I won't have issues this time, because I think we got it all sorted out. So yeah, I'm just gonna stop. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Wolfie out.